has made over the last probably 6 or 7 years now. And there's an element of that which was the legacy residual element of the commercial property that the borough holds. It just gives a performance summary of where that property is at, because it's a key part of our financing. There's also within the exempt papers a update on where we're at with some of the investments we're doing locally with some of the regen properties that we are underway with at the moment. But I'm more than happy, Chair, to discuss that further in the exempt section.
Thank you. I think that would be best. Right, we move on to item 7, Oxford Ridge Deep Retro Refurbishment, pages 9 to 20. And I imagine Mr. Smith is going to speak to this.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, I will delegate that responsibility to our Housing Development Manager, Louisa Blundell. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Louise.
Presentation, just loading now. Right, so this evening I've come to this Overview and Scrutiny Committee to report on the next phase of the Oxford Ridge deep retrofit, the green energy pilot, and just have a short presentation to go through, which is pulling out the key salient points of the report. So Oxford Ridge, just in context, is a regeneration scheme which is delivering both deep retrofit and new build programme. To date, we have undertaken 3 phases of new build and 4 phases of retrofit, including an early stage pilot. What you can see on your screen there is Site C Oxford Ridge, which is under construction, 30 homes at the moment. So we've made a commitment to deliver this regeneration scheme, which is new build and retrofit. The next slide gives you an example of a retrofit which property at Oxford Ridge, which we have undertaken in phase 3 of our refurbishment programme. The programme from the pilot phase, which was 5 properties, to this latest, has been a journey in itself. In the first pilot phase we undertook included basically rubbing back off and stripping wallpaper and resealing, and then doing a little bit of reconfiguration, new kitchens, new bathrooms, and that was in the pilot phase, the first phase.
Sorry, Louise, could I just interrupt there just
Yes.
to check? You've said that 3 phases of Oxford Ridge 7 have been completed.
No, there are 3 phases of new build, and then there are 3 phases of retrofit, the deep retrofit, starting with the addition of a pilot, which was 5 units only, so 4 in total. But
so the new build are the first 3, I take it.
The first 3,
and this
yes.
pilot is the 4th of 7, which is the introduction to 3 more phases of retrofit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was just trying to give you the whole context of the regeneration, so you can take the phases of new build that we've delivered just as the new build phases and park that, and then the retrofit, we've did a first phase of pilot, which was 5 units. That was a pilot, very early days, and then we've done 3 further phases which have been more detailed deep retrofit, but not with the renewable technology.
Sorry, so I'm still not completely clear.
Okay, this is the fourth
Yes,
4th phase of retrofit.
and there will be 3 more phases of retrofit after that. That's the plan.
No, there will be, depending on when properties become available, will we do another phase. It's very much dependent on the churn of people moving around the estate and the properties left.
So the property in the slides in front of us now, where does that belong?
That's been, I'm just showing an example of a property before the retrofit was undertaken. It's just an example to have on screen whilst I'm talking.
Okay, so have any retrofits actually started yet?
Yes, we've completed 3 full phases and 1 pilot phase.
I'm sorry, I'm not quite clear about this. New build and retrofit are 2 quite separate
Separate thing,
concepts.
absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Yes. So
Now, are you
when-
saying we've already done some retrofits?
Yes.
How
we've done-
many in total?
We've
How
done
many
a
dwellings?
pilot and then 3 others. So 4 in total.
So is it 3 properties or 3 phases?
3 phases.
And how many properties were involved in
Yeah.
those 3
Hang on,
phases?
so I shall run through the detail then. So we have, on the pilot phase, we had 5 homes. On the phase 1, we had 12 homes. And then we did a phase which was only external works. That was on 9 homes. And then the last phase was 7 homes, and we've got another 7.
So where does this particular project fit into that?
That picture there is just showing some images of a property that we did in the last phase.
Thank you.
So as I was saying, the original pilot wasn't a deep retrofit. We didn't strip it right back to brick. It was just a reconfiguration and taking the paper off and repainting. The further phases, the next phases, phases 1 and 3, they were taking the internals right back to brick, reconfiguring, taking the bathrooms upstairs, and then building up the body of the building from the inside with the new walls and bathrooms and kitchens. And in those phases, we had gas boilers still with new central heating.
Can I ask, were you putting extra insulation into those houses?
In the loft, yes, but not externally or in the floor. Okay, so so basically that was as far as we took it without replacing the gas boilers with green renewable technology. So if I just give a demonstration, this is a property pre-retrofit, and the next slide shows you what property looked like after it had been finished. So it looks like a new build inside. It's been stripped right back and everything is new. The ceilings in these properties have horsehair in them before retrofit, and now they've got modern materials in them, so they're better for the health and well-being of the resident living in them. So that was just an example of the work and how they looked after retrofit in the last phase. And then I'll just move on to the next phase that we're looking to seek approval for. So this is some images of the properties 7 properties we're looking to refurbish in this next phase. Consists of a pair of semi-detached properties, 169 and 170, they're joined together. And then the others are 172 and 173 are mid-terrace with a ginnel in the middle. And then 16 and 17 are half of a pair of semis, that the other half is owner-occupied property. And just to draw your attention to 183, you'll see on the image there's a property with a red front door on the left, and the 183 is the one that we're looking to refurbish, and that property includes an extension of a ground floor bedroom and wet room to provide adapted accommodation for someone that needs ground floor bedroom. So we've used the land asset at the front and side of the property to make the best use of it, basically. So the costs in the reports actually include for that provision. So the difference between the previous phases and this next phase is down to the green technology, which we're looking to pilot. So we're looking to, in previous phases, we didn't replace the double glazing, we just did patch replacement. So as long as the glazing was sound, we didn't replace it, which meant that potentially there were different ages of glazing within the property. So this pilot is looking to take out the double glazing, put in where they've in curtilage parking, a electric vehicle charging point, wastewater heat recovery, PV panels, and then the image on the top right, which shows someone's legs and a ladder, is my attempt of demonstrating the external insulation that's we're looking to add to the outside in this pilot, which basically, if I can zoom in, at the at the level where there's the grey panel, above that, the brickwork to the left is all brickwork, but below it is the render that we're looking to use the 2 lines of bricks below. So what I wanted to demonstrate here was if there was queries about the ability to match brickwork colour, it was just to demonstrate that you really wouldn't be able to spot the difference between the two. And in terms of us taking this forward, subject to approval, we would be looking.
Sorry, could you just stop there again?
Yes.
I'm losing you. Are you saying that is showing a building which has had some external
What I'm showing is
insulation done?
this pilot looks to add external insulation with potentially a product called K-Rend. And K-Rend has the ability to match brickwork colour. So where we, for example, are delivering a refurbishment on a property with a owner-occupied property next to it, the aim is to basically match the existing brickwork. And it was just a way of demonstrating with a photograph that shows that one is brick and the other 2 lines underneath are the K-Rend. So it just tries to demonstrate how we can achieve a brick finish. And we will, if we get the approval, actually set out to do a dummy wall so that we can just demonstrate to planning and others that what we're delivering. And the other thing that we're looking for is wastewater heat recovery, which in showers and baths will recover the heat from the warm water that's going down the drain and capture that. And then the other thing, just to draw your attention, in addition to the refurbishment internally, is the aim to use smart thermostats to actually provide us with some data analytics on what's going on in the property. There are various models available on the market, but the install costs for these are around £350, and then you have the database behind it, and enables the council to obtain information about performance of the property, so you can check against the specification that you've set for your contractors, but also it can help us understand how the residents are operating their property, and also provide them with advice, interaction with them, so that if we have, for example, a survey we want to put to residents, or we have concerns about potentially the way they're using the property, which is affecting our costs potentially for damp and mold growth, we can increase our engagement with residents directly by monitoring how the property is performing. And I did have a question before about data and privacy, and there's a privacy notice, and some councils and others have actually gone with the route that we have rights to that access of data to manage our property appropriately. So there's that's something that we would need to look into with legal, but they've got a legitimate interest because of how the performance of properties with the occupants in it, or how it's working.
So may I ask, are we intending to basically enter into an agreement with the tenants that we will be able to see, how many kilowatt hours of electricity they are consuming?
I think it's that, and more about how we can also help them understand how to better reduce their fuel bills as well. So it's
I
both
entirely agree
ways,
with that,
yeah.
but I think it would seem to me extraordinary that we shouldn't be collecting this data, because it puts us in a very strange position if we're basically making a very expensive bet that this is going to be a viable method of heating homes, and yet we're not going to collect the data to prove whether it is so or not.
Well, the aim is to put it in, and some, as I say, authorities have said this is a legitimate interest, and others have said we want to get residents' approval. So it's a mixed message out there to how people have addressed it.
Well, they look very nice homes. You would have thought the tenants would be happy to enter into an appropriate agreement for a small consideration, so that we could understand what their data was. Thank you.
It's okay. So that is an overview of the key elements that are in addition to the retrofits that we've done previously. So we just move on. So this is just some key reasons why we would want to progress with this pilot and what we would benefit from it. So there is the principle of refurbishment set out with the regeneration of Oxford Ridge in the previous phases that we've delivered, that by continuing to deliver, with the addition of the green technology, we're continuing our learning journey and approach to deliver net zero retrofit homes. Obviously, it supports our corporate strategy and also climate change emergency declaration. As I've mentioned, if we can install these smart meters, it will help us understand the operation of the property as against the specification, and also undertake that post-occupancy evaluation. It will also help us, well, it maximises the potential and value of the property. So you will have seen in the report that there was a value for money section that demonstrated the investment versus the increase in value. And use of this pilot will help us bring forward lessons learned in future phases when we have to address these issues in our rest of our stock.
Could you help me maximise potential and value? Potential is getting at what?
Sorry, I was just trying to minimise the numbers and words on the screen. So basically, by investing in this deep retrofit, we are getting the best value potential from our properties in terms of carbon reduction and energy efficiency, and the value by the increase in the value of the property as a result of the investment.
Members. Mr. Nicholson and Mr. Edmonds.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think this is a very worthwhile scheme. I think 7 is a good number for a pilot scheme. It'll give quite good feedback to contractors, tenants and council. So I do like this. I have a question about air source pumps. Do they need larger bore pipe work and radiators? The reason I asked this question is I'm thinking in the future where gas boilers will gradually be removed, and we want to put something in, and perhaps would these air pumps be compatible with existing gas systems?
I think in terms of options that are available to us. So air source heat pumps work with underfloor heating, as well as wet radiator systems, and the wet radiator systems generally have to be oversized. So as part of, if we didn't go down the route of underfloor heating, then we would need to have the specification for the wet radiator system to be oversized because they work better. Yeah. But I'm just in discussion with housing asset manager about the possibility of using underfloor heating. We've moved away from that, but we're just looking at it as a potential at the moment.
Thank you. So, Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I now have 7 questions. Do you want me to ask them as a list, or ask a question and then see a response?
With 7, do them one at a time. Let's hope.
Thank you. Okay, the first question relates to net zero. Considering the tons of carbon used in the upgrade, how many tons of carbon do you anticipate saving?
I'm afraid I can't answer that question. I'll have to come back to you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. The second question is, considering the cost, am I correct that the cost of the deep retrofit is nearly £250,000? I thought I had a figure with.
I think yes, it's 1.765 is the
7 million.
revised budget, and divide by 7, that's roughly 250,000.
That's what I'm asking. Oh, so that's correct. Thank you.
Yes.
And yet the average cost of a semi-detached is 300,000. So I'm having difficulty at the moment seeing value for money. The second question is, the budget has nearly doubled. There are now concerns for further escalation. Can you give us any assurance as regards to what's going to happen in terms of escalation of the project cost? Thank you.
In terms of just going back to the value for money question, I think that the investment in the stock and its enhanced value, there is a enhanced value as a result of the retrofit. I also think that effectively you are getting more or less a new build property as a result of taking it back to brick and all the investment in the external insulation as a result. So the only thing that won't be new is the roof, and they have been inspected and are sound. So whilst it isn't a new build, everything in it effectively would be new bar the roof.
Okay, thank you.
And could you remind me what the other question was?
Sorry, I'm about to ask you.
Okay.
What is the estimated payback duration and the cost of capital loss for the payback duration? In other words, do you anticipate that there will be a payback on this project or not? Yeah, then financial terms of carbon greenhouse gases reduced. What I'm looking for is what are we going to gain from spending all this money?
Well, we will have enhanced 7 of our homes to make them more energy efficient for our tenants, and our long-term aim to become a carbon neutral council.
Yeah, okay, I can't see that at the moment, but we might as well pass on. Thank you. The next question is about adequate ventilation. One of the concerns is when you could put it, thermally insulate a building, you have possibility of damp, and the air, you need circulation in order to make sure that the domestic atmosphere is not contaminated. What work have we done to make sure that that is not the case? And the other question is, have we got any indemnity from the contractor doing the work so that if something goes wrong, the remediation will be at their cost? Thank you.
Yes, to answer your question, the last question first, yes, there will be recourse. We would enter into a JCT contract. There will be a 12-month defect period and then a further latent defects period. And we also have an LABC warranty as well that would go with that. And then there will be other warranties that come with the products that we're using within the retrofit. And the first part of the question,
circulation.
Circulation, thank you. So yes, the house will have a whole house ventilation system that comes with the enhanced air tightness that will come with the external insulation. So it won't just have fans in the bathroom and kitchen, it will be a whole house provision. So that will address the need for greater air exchange and reduce the risk of damp and mold because of the air tightness becoming greater.
So, sorry, how is this circulation achieved? I mean, you said about fans in certain places.
It's whole house, so it basically is a system that works across the house to make sure that the air is refreshed.
Okay, refreshed and then exhausted or recirculated?
Yes, so it's in and out. Yes, so it's not the warmth is used to help with the efficiency of the house, but there's an exchange of air in and out, so it refreshes the air for the occupants. So
it emits cold air because the heat is then recovered during the exhaust system.
You've got an incoming fresh air and an outgoing air from the property. Yeah. Okay,
the last, sorry, yes, the nearly last but one question is, what assurance have we got about these materials? Because there was a gross error on Grenfell. We really need to make sure that there's no chemical or fire hazard from the materials used in the thermal insulation.
Yeah, it's a multi-layer system that's being proposed that is has been tested for fire retardancy, and basically it's layers of render. So it's not as in cladding in Grenfell, it's render finish.
So there's no toxic fumes from it when it combusts?
They have been tested, the materials in them are suitable for using on external insulation, yes. Okay,
thank you. I've got the positive feedback.
Yeah.
And the final question is, how can the remainder of Waverley dwellings be refitted and financed in a similar manner?
Well, I think this is a pilot.
Agreed.
And therefore we will take our learnings for this. This is a whole house retrofit, not a retrofit in stages, which is potentially more inconvenient to residents because we can do it all in one go. But I think there are elements in this. So you start with a fabric first approach, but as you've just pointed out, when you do a fabric first, that tightens the air tightness of the property, and therefore you need to look at the ventilation to mitigate against damp and mold. You know, this is a pilot, and there are evolving technologies and other things may come around that help us further with the future phases. But this is to learn so that we can work which elements function well, and which elements from the learning we want to implement in future phases.
So all future dwellings might not be upgraded to this standard?
Well, the government has set a standard that they're aiming for us to achieve across our stock, but we've set ourselves a target of being a carbon neutral council. So therefore, we've got to strive and aim to achieve that.
So are you saying this is a government standard we're working to? If so, which standard, please?
No, the government set a target of an EPC rating of a C across all of the council stock. But this is to exceed that, to help us achieve a pilot that we can then use to demonstrate to government that we are implementing our journey towards net zero as a council, and also use that, demonstrate through this pilot that we need funding. And it's to assist in our evidence case to say that, look, we can do this, but we need more funding to be able to deliver it across all of our stock.
So we may or may not be exceeding the government standard.
I think it has to take a balance, and what's been established is that one size fits all doesn't work across all our properties. They're different types. So this is a pilot. We've got other elements of stock across the borough that are of this type, and it's a way to start that programme of refurbishment.
I think this is a pilot because, frankly, no one knows for certain whether this technology actually works in terms of delivering livable homes. It is hoped that it works. It was interesting to be at the Landlord Services Advisory Board, where one of the officers made the point that this sort of home is a cooler home than a standard gas heated home. And you keep the occupant comfortable by having better wall as well as loft insulation. And I did want to pick up, after others have spoken, this business about underfloor heating. I thought that was absolutely essential. This doesn't work unless you do it, and have, I gather, mainly in the first floor, larger radiators, because the flow temperature is down to about 35 or 40 degrees compared to the 60 to 70 flow temperature typical of a gas system. Anyway, we've got Councillor Neil and then Councillor Seaborn is registered to speak on this item. So Councillor Neil.
Thank you, Chair. I'll first say that I'm fully supportive of these pilots because I'm into all the techie stuff on this subject. So well done from that point of view. I do have some concerns. We've already revealed here, we're talking about £250,000 nearly to do these things. And that obviously is a comparable figure with a rebuild. So I do hope we're keeping track of the comparative costs of refurbishment, which is a major refurbishment, very difficult refurbishments, and the comparative costs of rebuild as we go through this whole program. Now, I also realise that this is just a pilot, and so it's a learning curve, as you say. But I do have some concerns about where this is all going. And I'm not sure this is really the time to do it because we're talking about a pilot, but I will bring it up anyway. We seem to be targeting towards trying to do something by 2030, which is in line with all our climate change objectives. And I suppose as a council, if we put enough money into it, we could achieve something like that. We just go to the taxpayers and ask for a bit more money or take it off them. But we somehow have got to keep this in balance with what's happening in the private sector, it seems to me, because the private sector is not going to be able to achieve these things as quickly as we could. In fact, there probably would be very little progress by 2030 in the private sector. The private sector has got to weigh up what's happening, how the technology is progressing, and when it becomes affordable. So I think it's going to take a lot longer in the private sector. And I think we as a council, where we're trying to invest and we're trying to keep up with the climate change declarations and things, we're going to have to be very conscious of keeping that balance between what we spend of our taxpayers' money on our council stock compared with what our taxpayers will be able to afford to spend themselves, especially as I don't think we're going to be able to see the government coming up with, you know, £100,000 per person to do something. Whereas we might be able to find that if we tax our people enough. So I'm very concerned about that balance. And I know this is a delicate subject because, you know, we're talking about social issues here on everything that we do in our own housing stock. So I'll just mention those things for now. I certainly want to see, as the project goes along, the comparative costs of doing these refurbishments compared with rebuilds, because rebuilds will probably have advantages over the refurbishments. When you're talking about MVHR, you usually need quite a lot of ducting, and that takes up space, and that's difficult to fit in old houses. So there's all sorts of issues like that. We've already mentioned the underfloor heating issue as well, which is, are we doing are we doing underfloor heating as a matter of course? We're doing it where we can, but otherwise we're doing it with big radiators. So it's another compromise coming in there. So there you are. That's probably enough for me for the moment. Okay.
Would you like to clarify the underfloor heating situation? Are we planning to all 7? Will they have underfloor heating?
I was advised historically that we wouldn't install underfloor heating, but I have had a subsequent conversation with the new housing asset manager, who says that depending on the specification and clarification on that, that we would consider it. So there is
that in these tenders that we're looking at?
It is an option, because there is, as what I didn't get to say was effectively that we have tendered this project, that we tendered it with a detailed specification that used the wet radiator system, but there is the contract we're using has an intermediary contract with some element of design. And so there is an opportunity for us to discuss the design with the contractor, and with his assessment, look at cost options for underfloor if it works better. But our specification is oversized radiators at the moment, yes.
Would that change the tender price, do you think?
I think, as with all projects, when there is an element of design, that we have to look at getting the best. And if they say, it will, in short, it could, but it wouldn't. Our proposals at the moment are a wet radiator system with the contractor.
Time for more general comments later. I think, to your point, Councillor Neil, it's worth bearing in mind that the 2030 target has become completely notional. We're putting in new gas boilers in 3,700 of our council houses, because, as the chairman of the Landlord Services Advisory Board said, we have a duty to keep our tenants warm. And most of our stock is simply unlikely to be suitable without this sort of expenditure, at least. I think what these 7 pilot houses are intended to do is to see whether the technology works in real life. There are certainly houses where it works splendidly well, but they tend to be the new build, which I suspect is what you were driving at. When you start afresh, it's much easier to get the performance that you need to make air source and other heat pumps work. So Councillor Seaborn is sitting there very, very patiently. Councillor Seaborn, you registered to speak, so please carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Can I assume that you will be going into exempt later to examine the papers in section 10?
We will.
Yeah, good. Okay, because I've got some points to that. I've just got one main point to raise now, and I think first and foremost, I think the committee should be looking at suggesting that there's an adjustment in the way this project's being represented. I mean, the paper's entitled Oxford Ridge Refurbishment Phase 4 Deep Retrofit Green Technology Pilot. What this says to me is that the exercise is all about the green technology pilot, whereas in reality, the scope of work is actually rather different to that. I'd suggest that it should be the Oxford Ridge refurbishment phase 4 with deep retrofit, or possibly including deep retrofit. Now, why do I say that? Well, because this is actually a full refurbishment project with green technology added onto it. And the committee is being asked to review an amended budget of £1,765,000, which is just over £250,000 per property. If I was thinking about a green technology pilot, which is what I read in the title, and what I've been thinking about while this has all been going on, it's an horrendous cost. But of course, it's not a horrendous cost, because something like 70% of it is the refurbishment, and around 25% of it, or something like £70,000 per property, is the technology pilot. So to horrify members with, being approached for 1.765 million for a green technology pilot, when actually only about 400,000 of that is the green technology pilot, might actually get a slightly more better reception. So I would suggest, for the addition of 1 or 2 words in the title of this, people, it might be marketed better. The refurbishment is an unexceptional project of 7 1930s property. Total cost seems high for refurbishment, but it will still deliver 7 effectively new homes for around 20% less per bedroom or per occupant than any of the projects that we're actually working on at the moment, the new build projects. We quoted all those figures in the last council meeting in the new strategy. And if you remember, I stood up and queried that 1 or 2 of them seemed rather expensive, but none of those projects was anywhere near as low a cost per resident or per bedroom as this one is. And then if you look at around £70,000 per property for the green technology part of it, sounds like a lot, but actually that's within the ballpark that's being kicked around in the industry for a full retrofit for green technology purposes. So I think this represents good value for what it is. I just think a little bit of extra care in how it's represented when it's taken for final approval might get better reception, rather than having people gagging at 1.75 million for a green technology project. Tell them that they're getting a full refurb and paying an extra 400,000 plus for the technology pilot, and then I'd feel a lot happier about it. Thanks for your time, and I've got further questions for.
Just quickly on that, just to clarify. And so really in the title you're saying, if you simply remove the deep retrofit and simply put including green technology pilot, that might get the sense better. I'll come back to you. So, Mrs. Wrighton, were you seeking to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Interesting debate, and thank you. And like you, I'd looked at the costs and thought, goodness, that's a lot of money. But I think one of the other things for me, from a director's point of view, is what we learn and what housing authorities learn from this. Because I don't know if Andrew or Louisa know, are there any other authorities doing this kind of retrofit on their stock? Because at the end of the day, we can't replenish all our stock, given how many we've got and the need for people to have homes. So there has to be another way of looking at it. So I think it's really important that there are 2 things. One, that we seek any opportunity for grants that are out there from the government in terms of learning about deep retrofit. And secondly, that we take the learning out of it in terms of what we will learn and what we can share with other housing authorities if we go down this route about retrofitting stock and the realities of it, the expensive, difficult realities and what the outcomes are. I think there's a really important learning facts that we need to take into account. And Councillor Seaborn reminded me of it when you were talking about the title of the report, because quite often people will read that and that's what's in their mind when they read the rest of the report, but there's more to it than that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
No, just before I go back to Councillor Seaborn, I think the other great unknown is seeing how tenants actually operate the properties. You can have the best green building in the world, but if the tenant doesn't operate it the way it should, you can have an awful lot of wasted heat and cost. Councillor Seaborn to go back to, and then Councillor Martin.
No, I think I made my point. But basically, I would suggest the committee recommends the additional 1 or 2 words just to make it clearer to members when they're making the final approval decision. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Yes, I would support what Councillor Seaborn has said. I looked at this and thought, good Lord, this is a huge sum of money. It's clearly wrong. And then, of course, when you go into the detail, well, there is more to it than I think, and it just needs to come out a bit better when it's presented to full council, or I would have thought to the executive, and to make it clear the element which is the basic refit and the element which is the green bit, and a bit more detail about the broader scheme, rather than having to delve around and find it within the text. Just 2 points, if I may, one small one. You mentioned about the smart thermostats and the feedback. And I have to say, a few years ago, I had a new central heating system, and the thermostats and the controls are ridiculous. I mean, they are capable of just about anything. They are fancy things which you can do anything with. I have to say, I am totally and completely perplexed by it all. I still don't understand it all. You know, I really want to have an on-off switch and turn it up and turn it down, but it offers me hundreds of things which I never want to use. And if I try and use them, it all seems to go wrong. I have to reboot about 3 different things. So my plea is don't make it too complicated, because if you do, it'll be self-defeating. And I'll just pass on my own experience. Just quickly on the budget, the 981,000 I understand, and we're asking for an additional 784,000, which is an additional £112,000 per house. That seems to be a lot over and above the original budget. Do I understand that the 981 is perhaps the sort of typical cost that we had with the earlier?
Could I suggest
retrofits?
that we actually just hold on for literally 3 minutes, because that will come in the exempt part. We can go
Okay,
into
well,
the
but
details.
it's up. I mean, these figures are in the public domain. It's not. These are not.
I appreciate that, but if we want to delve into the details of why.
Okay, I'm happy. Yes, I'm certainly happy to defer that. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to come back on this general part? Councillor Edmonds and then Councillor Neil.
Just a quick question as regards to costs. Are operational costs, in other words, maintenance, considered as against to capital costs? Sometimes you can invest in capital and reduce your maintenance cost in future. So has that balance been considered?
Yes, it will have been considered as part of the proposal, because the whole life cycle of products, that's part of our looking at embodied carbon, as well as the net zero in operation as well.
Councillor Neil, and I think Mr. Smith is keen to say something. Councillor Neil.
Yes, and we've touched on this one a couple of times, the maintenance costs and that angle. We're installing a lot of new technology here and new products, which are to a certain extent unproven in their longevity. So as part of the pilot, I want to be sure that we are monitoring the ongoing costs once people are occupying, their ability to understand and operate the systems, their ability to look after them, and our ability to maintain them. These are going to be important parts of it, I think. This is so new, a lot of this stuff that we're putting in, that we don't really know how long it's going to last, and how often it's going to have to be maintained and renewed. So I think these longer term projections need to be very much part of this pilot operation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think annual maintenance is always required. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for the discussions, councillors. It's all very useful to Louisa and I as we seek to take this forward. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are about to embark on the biggest stock condition survey that we've done in the borough, certainly as long as I can remember, and probably before. I think we're going to be horrified by some of the things that come back, and the things that we need to address in our properties. And there'll be a lot of work to do and a lot of money to be spent, I think, over the next few years. What I think this project will do is give us so much more knowledge and intelligence about what we can do, and perhaps what we're not able to do. I think that my director's point was very well made, the learning that will come from this, and also what we can cascade down to sister authorities. The question was asked, are there other authorities doing this? I know of 1 or 2 who are doing it not quite to the standard that we are. And so I think that when we have the results of the stock condition survey, that'll be rolling results, and we'll begin to get a picture of the state of our stock across the borough linked with this particular project, it really will give us a very good idea and intelligence on what we are able to do and how much it's going to cost to get those properties to where they need to be. So I think there's a more global exercise going on here, which I think members will find very interesting as we move forward. So just to make that point, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Right. So, Louisa.
So I just wanted to pick up the point about education of our residents in using the equipment. So the plan as part of this is to pull together a video so that it can be accessible and viewed. So we'll give them some induction. There'll be people available during the defect period and beyond, but we'll provide some digital media that they can look at to and paper copy in terms of our home user guides, but just so that people have accessibility when someone else isn't around, just to be able to refresh their memory on how to use things. Ultimately, the air source heat pumps shouldn't be really touched to enable them to work most efficiently. But yeah, just to pick up on the point about the learning and education of the residents living in the properties as well as our own staff and in maintenance of them.
Thank you. Councillor Hegan.
I just wanted to pick up on that point and ask, is it possible to build in access to some sort of help desk for people who really don't like watching videos, just want someone to talk them through what they're looking at? Because one of the points I wanted to make to pull a few of these strands together is I'm not quite content that some councils think you can sort of almost insist on access to data and others think it's a GDPR thing. I do think we have an opportunity for a very persuasive agreement, but nevertheless an enforceable agreement, that our tenants have to give us access to the data and have to cooperate in any advice we give them on getting optimal use from this very expensive technology. And ask if the committee agrees that that should be one of our recommendations, because I do think it's an important validation of the money we're spending.
Good, thank you. Anyone else on this section, or can we move on? Councillor Neil.
Sure.
Just one little more point there. And these are really going to be high-tech homes compared with the homes that we have today, where maybe the boiler is the most sophisticated thing and you call out the gas man once a year with a bit of luck to sort it out. These homes are going to need the filters changed every few weeks and all sorts of monitoring that we're going to be in the hands of our tenants. So whether we can trust them or help them to do all this and how we're going to manage all that is going to be a very significant factor, I think. So I just wanted to emphasise all that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hyman, I think, who's certainly registered to speak in good time. Well done. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thanks. Unfortunately, I have been unable to get hold of any of the pink papers, so I'm going to be missing an awful lot of this. But it seems to me that we're being told that this is all about lessons learned and learning things. Well, I'm slightly surprised. I thought we'd learned that air source heat pumps really aren't the way that we should be going at the moment, because when you need the heat, you're having to pump in more electricity to get the heat out than you. It just doesn't wash. It sounds like we're putting a lot of slap on the outside of these homes and a load of new windows in and a bit more insulation. But we're all told what with COVID and preventing mold, because people want some fresh air. You have to have your windows open. The whole thing becomes very, very difficult for anybody to add up. These things don't add up. Wisdom's learning from others' mistakes, not making the mistakes yourselves, and for the benefit of everybody else to learn from. And I'm slightly surprised that we are world leaders in this at Waverley, and that we are leading on this. No one anywhere else in this sort of climate, it appears, has done this, though some other councils are doing things a different way. At this money, I mean, surely I've listened to what all of you said very sensible things. Surely we should just be saying we can't afford to do this. We're not going to be able to learn any lessons from it that we haven't learned already, other than that we can't afford to do it. And this at the moment is out the question. The same as you, Chairman, pointed out with the gas heating system. It's all very well to run around saying, yeah, we're going to do, cut out zero carbon and all the rest, but we're still going to be using plastic after 2030. We're not going to have changed all our ways at Waverley, and we can pretend we're zero carbon, but quite frankly, we'll be far from it. It's only if you try and balance this against good things we're doing, like spending our lives sat in trees or something, that we're going to
Could you get to your point, please?
Well, wisdom here says that we don't throw away money learning lessons that other people are actually throwing money at the moment. We're being asked to double the cost of a project, and at some point you just have to turn around and say, well, if we've got one on the go, let's finish that. That'll be our project. But are these non-smoking homes so that the air system doesn't get all clogged up? What's the and we've been told that we're not going to be able to get the feedback from it. If you can't get feedback, there's nothing to be gained. If we've got to force people to give us information and the courts are going to say we can't.
Yeah, I think we're all keen that there should be feedback, and I think we're fairly optimistic that it can be obtained. But I think,
well, the same with underfloor. We're not getting what everybody thinks we're getting, Chairman, and for the money that we're getting, what is the benefit for the cost? And I just can't see that if you went to a focus group of residents and said to them, look at these costs and the benefits, that it's a vanity project as far as I can see. Unfortunately, that's the way other people will see it. I mean, I can understand what we're trying to do, and I, in a way, congratulate the council for trying to do it. But I think a bit more sense that says, let's learn from some other people's mistakes before we throw this sort of money at them. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we've got your point. Thank you very much. Okay, I now want to move on to the exempt part of the meeting.